Yeah, so we should be live. So everyone, thanks for joining us on this edition of the Wrestling Rewind. Dave, welcome back to the show, sir.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
How have you
Pleasure.
been?
Good to see you still kicking.
Yeah, well, we're surviving, right? Harsher lockdown now in Ireland, so it's even more harsh than it was last week. So yeah, we can still leave the house, kind of, and it's just weird. So more wrestling, but a lot of news happened this week. Still, WWE kind of went a bit mad with things, so we're going to talk about that. But it's Easter Monday. Well, yeah, it's still Easter Monday, so happy Easter.
Happy Easter indeed.
And we have a special religious team list of stuff coming up later on in the show as well. Great suggestion. I didn't think there were so many religious wrestling angles, but there's a lot. So we're going to talk about that for this hour anyway. So yeah, if you want to check us out, go over to nerdtoknowmedia.com, and also we're on the True Penny channel. So yeah, you can find us there. nerdtoknowmedia.com is the best way to reach out. And yeah, send us an email, what you like, what you don't like. And it's also on Spotify and iTunes. So Dave, first things first, the Fallout WrestleMania. Last week we were like, hey, what's going to happen next week? And yeah, we still have live shows, well, tape shows. And then there was the move for WWE to tape a whole bunch of shows for like 5 days. Oh, sorry, 5 weeks. Over 5 days. And halfway through, Vince McMahon pops up and he's like, hey, no, we're going live.
Really, that's how it went down. I missed that
Yeah,
little
yeah,
tidbit
yeah.
in it.
Yeah, so apparently what happened was all the talent was there and they were going to tape the 5 weeks. Raw, SmackDown, NXT, and 205 Live, which is still a show for some reason. And I find that it's a weird one. And yeah, halfway through SmackDown, I think they had like 85% SmackDown done, and Vince is like, "No, that's it. Pack it up. We're going live."
Wow. It doesn't surprise me. I mean, to be fair, did this also coincide with the announcement that the XFL was effectively getting shut down?
Again.
Because that had to
Yeah.
be. I feel so bad because this
Yeah.
time it wasn't Vince's fault.
No, it
It
was.
genuinely wasn't. It was
Listen,
getting great ratings.
God
People were
doesn't.
watching it.
God doesn't want this to exist. It's why
That's
he
the
sent
theme
the
for the
plague.
day, yeah.
Yeah, he sent the plague, and he's like, "That's it. No XFL for anyone." Yeah, no, I do feel sorry for him, but he lost something like 120 million this time around.
Jeez.
So it's like, oh, but this deal, Dave, it's why Vince did this. Apparently, it's got to do with their contractual agreements.
Okay.
So all the so we don't know the Fox deal yet, but we do know the USA deal. They get 49 weeks of live television. They have to do it, right? So there's 3 weeks wiggle room for Christmas and New Year's,
Right.
and that's why they do it. So what would happen here is if WWE went taped or had an off season, we've always wondered why they didn't do an off season. So now we know why. It's literally the contract. They take an off season, bang, they can end the contract. Fox apparently have a similar deal, but if USA came out, they could pull out or not pay them. So that's what this is coming down to, which
Yeah,
I think is, it's very unfair. Like in a time when they're the only thing still going, and you have, I believe, yeah, no, correct me if I'm wrong. Like I'm not in America, so I don't know. Are ESPN literally just showing wrestling and sports stars playing games?
I
Is that what's
watch.
happening?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I watch Fox Sports One, which may actually be a better example for this.
Right.
And I had wondered why they weren't preempting. There was about a week where they preempted their live shows, just their commentators talking, and then yeah, they went straight to we're doing basically Skype talks about nothing because nothing's happening in sports. Why are they doing this? And now it makes a lot more sense
Yep.
because they probably have those contracts in place. And yes, ESPN is doing, people are playing video games or they're showing old stuff, but they're trying to keep some form of live interaction going on. And that must be why.
Yeah, like it seems ridiculous, and it is ridiculous because, to be honest with you, I'd much rather get decent, wrestling for 5 weeks that has been pre-taped than live, which is probably going to be what we've been seeing all the way up to WrestleMania, which is one match here and there and then filler. and stock footage.
Right.
So it's like, this makes no sense. Like, what do you think it's going to be? But again, these contracts were written up at a time where the world wasn't ending. So,
The world is ending
it
out there.
feels like it. Every single day, you're like, this just gets worse and worse and worse. So I don't know. Like, I would be reconsidering this if I was on the WWE roster or even working for WWE backstage. I'd be like, hey man, no,
Hmm.
But even now, apparently there's a case of the virus in an on-screen talent now in WWE. So it's not a wrestler, probably not a commentator, but it could be either an interviewer or a referee. We don't know yet.
Oh wow! And because of I don't know what they're called in Ireland, but over here they're called HIPAA laws, where you can't disclose the name of the people who have certain diseases, whatever. That's your doctor-patient confidentiality that protects
Yeah,
you. So
we have something similar here.
it probably won't come out unless somebody's a complete jerk that works for a news site and lets it out. Oh look, my hand disappears if I do that. Learning up green screens.
Wait, hold on. You're on a green screen.
It's not really our business, honestly.
Jake the Snake Roberts isn't behind you.
He has gone through some miraculous time traveling to look this good.
I'm telling you.
Honestly,
You don't break kayfabe, Dave.
Right,
You gotta keep it real.
Me, of all people, I should be aware of that.
Exactly.
Slack I've got over
Exactly. But you're slipping in your older age. That's the truth. You're slipping. Oh man, I have to say I love the fact that every week, Dave, you have to have a new background, man. You just have to it just needs to be a different background because it's great.
And it's themed to what we're talking about.
Oh, for sure.
Right now, you guys might be wondering why Jake the Snake. Oh, trust me, you'll figure it out.
You will find out. Yeah, it's if you piece it together though. But yeah, look, we have similar laws here in Ireland. Actually, in all of EU, it's the GDPR, and basically, it's basically a right to privacy. So they don't disclose it, even when cases were happening here. They wouldn't even tell us where it was. They're like, yes, in the east of Ireland. In the east of Ireland is where Dublin is, and all of our major cities. So it's like that doesn't narrow it down at all. It's like you might as well just say in Ireland somewhere. Okay.
Well, I can go further, and I doubt my employer is watching this. So we're up to, I won't even say the number of cases. We're up to, it's in the double digits cases of where I work right now, and we're not even allowed to know what area of the building the people worked in. That's how tight-lipped they are.
That's a bit scary.
It's scary. Frightening.
Yeah, I would not be okay with that. I'm not gonna lie to you.
I'm not okay with that.
Yeah, I would just be like, I'm not coming in. Sorry, that's not happening.
There's a reason my doctor told me not to go in tonight. And
yeah, fair. Yeah, Dave. Yeah, that's stay out as long as you can, man. That's worrying. Like it's, I know over here we acted a little bit slower than normal, but we still managed to catch it in time. So it's one of those things. But as far as like full lockdown and telling where cases is, we're still not great with it, but it's because of the similar kind of thing. So I don't think we'll know who it is. We might know eventually when someone's like, hey, this is over. But here's the real thing, and here's when what hits the fan, and we probably will find out when, or I was going to say if, but it's when at this point, when a talent tests positive.
Yeah, because then everything has to get shut down, right?
Yeah, that's what happened with the NBA.
Yeah,
that's what happened with the NBA. So that's what I'm waiting for next. And then what are they going to do? They're going to have nothing. That's why I think WWE should have just taped the 5 weeks. It's ridiculous that they didn't.
I mean, you might have to do on screen. Would it count as live? Now we're playing Vince's pawns right now. Would it count for live on screen if you host showing old pay-per-view matches?
I think they probably
get away with it.
What, where they just do live commentary over old matches?
Well, no, where they introduce it, where it's kind of like a WWE backstage type of thing, and they set it up, and then they throw you to the old matches.
See, that's what I thought they were going to do initially, and it's probably what they're working to. You know what I hope they don't do? Because actually, I kind of want them to do, because it'd be really funny for them to just start doing WWE Universe mode in 2K20, because it's such a broken game, and they have their own little mode, and you're like, oh, look how broken this is. I kind of want that, actually. That'd be really funny.
We could have up, up, down, down just take over all of the WWE broadcasts.
Dude, they're pretty much all over 2K20. Like they're just there all the time. So again, W2K20, what did they know? They just predicted the whole future of 2020. What
It
it
could turn into the AJ Styles network because he is one of the biggest gamers that they have, and he
That's true.
hosts a Mixer show at least once a week. So
See, I don't think Vince knows what Mixer is. He'd probably be
no,
like, I don't want a drink. It's not a time for a drink.
he probably wouldn't let AJ do it.
Yeah, it's just like, oh no, I'm not playing the video games. Yeah, look, it's I'm still kind of sitting back going, this is crazy because AEWs have their shows pretty much taped, and they also have a mix of live stuff, and they're off in some compound somewhere doing God knows what. But you're still going to get content because they're not telling anybody where they are. So it's like, okay, like, and I know, have you heard of what UFC are doing?
Yeah, they're going to some Indian tribal land or something.
Yeah, Dana White's buying an island, so they're pretty much going to be Mortal Kombat now for a little while. And you're like,
Oh, he's buying an island. See, originally I heard he
yeah,
was buying an island, and then I heard it was a tribal land that they were getting away with just for this pay-per-view. So maybe he's
I think he's just buying an island so he can just keep running shows.
that's fantastic.
It's just like, what are you doing?
That's fantastic.
It's just what world are we living in? You know, it's ridiculous, but also funny at the same time.
It's the
Uh,
bizarre thing about the United States being such a large country. You have areas where I am, where we're a lot harder hit by this.
mm,
You have areas that have almost no cases whatsoever because, I mean, America is
it
the
was big.
size of the EU. People forget that.
Yeah.
I mean, even though we have the most cases, and nobody's here to listen to me talk about freaking healthcare, um, but whatever, you signed up. Uh, so even though we have the most cases in the world, discounting China's lies,
Yes.
conspiracy. Um,
Conspiracy. Yeah. We'll find out eventually. We'll find out eventually. You
yeah,
know, where are the
you know what?
bodies?
You know what the Black Rain Japan was all about. Anyway,
Yep.
so even though we have the
4chan,
most
4chan,
cases,
4chan knows all, guys. Seriously, like,
Spokane,
seriously.
we actually have less cases per capita, and we're testing more. So I don't know. It's weird how it all works out. I don't know.
You forget, like, it's weird. Like, if you do forget how big America is, because a lot of people don't have the reference point of America. If you're in America, even people in America don't have, like, about 40% of people don't have passports. So it's like, come on, like, it's that big. You don't have to leave the country. Like, I remember
No,
driving through the states, and it'd be like Wendy's, McDonald's, Starbucks, Dunkin' Donuts, Wendy's, McDonald's. And you're like, Jesus, this all kind of looks the same. And then you just hit a different state, and you're like, this is like a different country. This is
nope.
insane, you know. And and this was when I was younger, you know. And even when I was there last year in San Francisco, I was like, oh, cool. I'll get to go down to Anaheim. And my friend was like, you know, that's like a flight away. I'm like, no, it's not. It is. It is. California is very big.
Try
So
getting
yeah.
anywhere in Texas. You're like, oh,
Oh
I can
yeah.
drive from here to here. No, you can't.
No, you
That's a
can't.
day trip.
I remember when Greg was on the show, he'd be like, yeah, I did a 12-hour drive. I'm like, you did what? You could like come up and down Ireland like 4 times in that point. You know, it's just like, you know, end to end, you know? It's like, that's crazy. And he's like, yeah, that's just a drive. I'm like, Canada's big, dude, you know? But
Canada's very large.
like, look, it's America is crazy. You know, I love you guys, but it's wild. It really is. And the whole, like, we're just watching there going, what is going on? You know, because you've seen all this kind of doom and gloom stuff, and then you hear Dana White's going to buy an island to put on fights, and you hear Vince McMahon is trying to show fake fights, and you're like, dude, what are you doing? Just stop, you know. But then again, as you said, you know, it's not a kind of, it's not a, like the whole country won't lock down because it doesn't have to. You know, even though,
Right.
you know, it's, you know, like Nevada and stuff like that isn't that bad if you're out in the middle of the desert. Like
No.
it's, you know, but
But
New York,
scarily enough, this is the first time in the history, not even post 9/11. This is the first time in the history of the United States that all 50 states are under emergency disaster declarations. So
yeah,
this is a very weird time for us.
yeah, it's a very weird time for like the free world in general because you're just sitting there going, this doesn't feel right. None of this feels right, and you know that's what I like about wrestling staying on because it's something you can focus on that isn't this. But the real world is starting to kind of come into it because it's such a like it's consuming everything, right? Like I know I got an email there from TNA's PR people saying, yeah, we have a 2 hour show coming, but that's all pre-taped. Like there's no one working in TNA at the moment.
Right.
Because they just said, look, it's not worth it.
I think it's
Uh,
adorable you're still referring to it as TNA.
Sorry, I don't even mean to. It's just that's what happens. What are they called? Impact Wrestling?
I think it's Impact.
Yeah, I don't know. Look, at one point, I stopped giving up when he changed the name 4 times in a year. I was like, listen, it's TNA. Okay, just that's what it is. But they are doing a show soon where they're going to do like a back to TNA for one night only or something like that. So it's like that's what it's called. Um, but yeah, and they're not doing shows. AEW have their shows still kind of running, but it is what it is. Vince is crazy, and I'm interested to see now who the next. What happens when these cases are revealed to be a thing. But yeah, hopefully it's not. It's not one. With a compromised immune system. Like I get scared every time I see Daniel Bryan on TV.
Yeah.
Literally, I'm like,
Yeah.
wait.
Seattle is definitely a hotspot. I was shocked they brought him in for Mania
I
because the
couldn't believe
initial
it.
reports were that he was not being brought in.
Yeah, and I'm just like, why is he there? This is just dangerous. It's irresponsible. But if we end up with 2K20 as WWE, it will be like finally we get to have, Doug Lackey's big thing where he's like, play your video game. It's like, well, wrestling is video game now, literally. So I think it'll be hilarious. Actually,
Yeah.
I was playing 2K19, no 2K17 recently, and there's an achievement where you set up your universe mode where you have Sting versus the Undertaker at WrestleMania. And I'm like, oh, I actually missed 2K17. So I didn't know that was a thing. And I got it by accident. I was like, oh, this is great. So yeah, maybe use 2K17 or 2K19 as your engine WWE if you're going to do it, because that 2K20 is a broken game. Like really is. It's glorious though. By the way, I finished it.
Oh, you
I
finished?
finished it. Yeah, finished the career mode. At the end of it, Samoa Joe tries to kill you, literally.
Oh no. Oh no. Oh,
Literally.
like in TNA. Remember
Like
when
in DNA, yeah, where he got dragged off into the van and got the penis on his face. Uh, but yeah, no. At the end of it, you're at the Hall of Fame speech, right? And then Samoa Joe comes out and attacks you. Like, 100% shoot. Like, it's not an angle. Like everything in this game is real, right? Which is bizarre.
right.
And yeah, and then the main villain, who is like your high school bully for the girl. She's like, oh, I paid these people to be your best friend's parents because his parents are dead. And then on the Titantron, they just play the two graves, and you're like, what? What?
What?
And then they put the Hall of Fame spot on the line in a match at WrestleMania, which I didn't think you could do. And it's just like, okay. Yeah, so that's how it ends. And then Samoa Joe tries to kill you again, and he disappears. So
Wow, that game sounds. Unfortunately, it's broken to all hell, but that game actually sounds like it's got really intriguing storylines
the
that they
story,
could pull from.
man, the storyline is the best part of is the best, most broken thing ever. But it's great. Oh, I forgot to mention, The Rock is the president of the United States, and you fight him in the Royal Rumble.
This was a real discussion. I don't know to our international viewer. Well, you're international. This was a real discussion a couple years ago on whether The Rock would run for the presidency.
He probably will. I don't see that outside of happening. Or that's probably something that's going to happen. This
I
game
doubt
is,
it. I
dude. This
doubt
game
it.
is prophetic. This
It's
that's this
prophetic.
game. This game is like Nostradamus. You know, it predicted, the boneyard match. It predicted empty arenas. So I'm not
Mhm.
surprised what's going to happen. So if Samoa Joe comes out with a bionic arm, I'll be like, what?
It's not impossible.
It's not
It's
impossible.
funny though, speaking of prophetic, you were talking about the Sting versus the Undertaker, and wouldn't the Sting versus the Undertaker be the ultimate crux of today's discussion topic for the end of the show?
Right? Yeah, that would be cool. All right, so we've danced around it enough because, like, as I said, there's stuff happening in the world of wrestling, but not
But there's
much,
really not. There's
not
not.
that
We did.
much. We
We tried
tried.
filler. We ended up talking about viruses.
Yeah, so that is the story, right? That's the whole world right now.
It's the world.
So what we're going to do is we're going to until stuff happens, we're going to just kind of take a more kind of topic approach. So because it's Easter, we're going to talk about religious angles in wrestling, and there's a lot.
Oh my gosh, so many more than I thought
There's
when we
so
threw
many.
this topic around.
There's so many. So we have about half an hour, 25 minutes,
Yep.
half an hour.
All right.
So Dave, you came up with the topic, so I'll let you open this up.
Well, I think the most obvious, I guess I'll go with my background here, is Jake the Snake Roberts obviously was incredibly religious. He went through a whole segment of, and it was really the turning of the Attitude Era, because
Mm.
people always debate when did the Attitude Era turn? Was it 94? Was it 95? When did this audience, the crowd reaction is really kind of when you gauge it. And we had gone from the Hulk Hogan, say your prayers, take your vitamins, kind of angles to they brought Jake the Snake back, and he was coming in, and in real life, he was a born again Christian, and he was, he might have even have become an ordained minister. I can't remember the full scope. And they gave him a full on gimmick where even his even his snake was named. You're gonna correct me on this. I can't remember. Was it named Revelation? They named it something
They
like
did. They
that.
named it something like that. Like it was Damien for ages, so they changed it into something more biblical. I
Yeah,
think it
they changed
was.
it to something religious.
Yeah, I think it
Um,
was. I think it was Revelation.
and it was that kind of cartoony early 90s character that did not go over with the crowd. It was a complete failure. However, from that, we then segue into that oh so famous King of the Ring with Steve Austin and the 316, which I don't know how much more religious and on the nose you can get than that.
Right.
Um, so it was this bizarre, weird, real life characters that you had who were becoming born again Christians. WWE would then take this and hilariously make their Christians heels, usually. TNA especially would do that.
WWE actually, when you think about it, and this is like a running theme. A lot of their Christian or characters would actually be healed, and a lot of it's got to do with, particularly when we go on, you'll see more authority figures. Authority figures, that would be one of the things.
Yes,
So they would so anyone who any kind of authority going into the Attitude Era were really depicted as bad guys. You know,
absolutely.
but as you said, 316 Austin refers to, he's not shooting on Jake the Snake. It's weird out of context. You think Austin is just shooting on him, the man, but
No,
if
he's
you're
not.
no, and but that's the way it looks, because if you weren't watching it, you would think that. But watching it in context, you're like, oh, he's shooting on the character.
Shooting on the character. And I think
Yeah.
there was even a backstage altercation where Jake the Snake was like, don't bring my God into this, blah, blah, blah. It was like a
Yeah.
big thing at the time.
Yeah.
But that I think that it's funny how this started as me going, oh, let's talk about religious angles and whatnot. And it really turned into bringing religion into the WWE, kind of started the Attitude Era in a weird way.
It did, and it's more just the Attitude Era taps into the overall feeling at the time there
Right.
in the world, in like loads of different ways. And I think just the overall new approach to religion was one of them. And it's great. Mick Foley's book's actually pretty good, where he talks about, the with Undertaker, where Undertaker's pretty much repackaged as a satanic cult leader,
Right.
and there's like all this stuff that was going on, and Mick Foley's like, yeah, they weren't 100% wrong, where it's like, yeah, they crucified a man and all this kind of stuff, and it's like, yeah, but they did it on the Undertaker symbol, so it was less so. But
that.
these
That's
are
the
all
Big Boss Man, right?
no, they did it to big no, they hung the Big Boss Man at
Oh, they
WrestleMania,
hung the Big Boss Man. That's right.
and they crucified Austin,
Austin, yes, of
and then
course.
they put Stephanie McMahon on the symbol as well.
Which is so bizarre because was their dad doing it? We found out later.
Yeah, we found out later. But yeah, and that was kind of like that was the inverse of that, where they went full on. Let's take this as far as we can go, and there was nowhere they could go after that. They kind of dropped religious angles then, until one that I wanted to bring up, Muhammad Hassan.
Well, I actually want to go back. You're skipping a very, very major one.
I am, but as like that would be another Undertaker. Like the reason why I bring that up is because the Undertaker's involved there as
Oh
well.
no, 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 no! I'm not. I know who you're talking about. Not him. But I want to
Okay.
talk about somebody early 90s as well. Well, not
Oh,
early,
okay. Go for it.
late
Go for it.
90s. Yeah, yeah.
Go for it.
Let's not forget that Goldust, when he did his transition to being Mr.
Oh,
Runnels, he
yes.
came out as this religious figure acting kind of for the network, and he would say how all these things that the WWE was doing were going against the religious values and against the evangelical right, and that was his character, which again was played as a heel hilariously.
And this was seven.
And
This was seven, wasn't it?
it was around that time.
No, the character was called Seven.
Oh, you mean the character
Yeah,
itself?
yeah.
No, Seven was his character in TNA, wasn't it? This he went by Terry Runnels, didn't he?
In WWE, sorry, in WWE he did Terry Reynolds.
Yeah,
In
yeah, yeah.
WCW, he had a character called Seven, which was the exact same gimmick as this.
Right. But
Yeah,
they did try this. This was something that Vince Russo wrote, and who again is a great example of this because he became a born again Christian in
and
TNA and then regretted stuff from the Attitude Era. So
yeah,
yeah,
which is really funny.
it's so convoluted
Yeah,
when you
yeah.
think about it. There's no way to even get through all of this. The more I read about it, the more I picked up, and I was like, we're just going to throw things at the wall, and
Well,
hopefully this makes sense to the listeners.
I think
And
the best way
really,
to do it is to just kind of run through them and then
yeah,
try to have a true line. The biggest true line I found is the Undertaker's in a lot of these. Because the
yes,
Undertaker is kind of like he's in about 50% of them. In
yes.
some way, he's related to them in some way. I don't know why, but I think it's just because he either he was there for so long, he has the supernatural thing, or he's just a great foil for whatever. Except for with Muhammad Hassan, because that was just bad timing and really on the nose, and yeah, really bad timing. Um, yeah,
You want to know there's no worse bad timing in the history of
yeah,
professional wrestling than
literally,
777.
literally, yeah. He was, and then like doing that angle with the lads pulling him out, and it was just like, okay, this is, so that's what they were trying to do. So it was just and that's one directly influenced by 9/11 and the world that existed after that. I thought it was a cool idea. Just the timing was horrific, and there was no way of coming back of it. So we haven't seen something similar to that, and I don't think we will, because it is what it is. The world just isn't receptive to that. But that involved the Undertaker.
It
Someone,
did.
and someone else around the same time. Was it 2004, 2007 with Mordecai?
Mordecai would have been. This was during the rebirth of ECW because he was originally a vampire.
No, other way. He was Mordecai first.
Oh, he's Mordecai first.
He was Mordecai first, yeah.
I recapped the show. You'd think I'd remember this.
And then they sent him back to OVW. He was
That's
called up
right.
to ECW, and he came back as Kevin Thorne.
Oh, that's right. Okay, you're right. You're right. The
Yeah,
zombie vampire.
zombie
I
vampire.
this is funny because when this topic came up, I had no idea that we both were such big fans of Mordecai.
Mordecai was great. Well, it wasn't great, but the idea was
No.
great. The idea
Yeah.
was really cool. Like for anyone who doesn't know, right? And if you have the network, go back and watch it. It's definitely worth your time. He was basically the anti-Undertaker, right? He came out in white. He had the big cross, and he would cut promos about the evils of the WWE, and he was pretty much set up to fight the Undertaker that year, I think it was 2004. So that WrestleMania, that was going to be his big angle. Actually, anyone who watched the Shawn Michaels match, where he came out in all the brilliant white and stuff like that, that was pretty much what Mordecai was supposed to look like in that match. But I think he got one squash match, and then Bob Holly beat him to death, and that was it.
It was not pretty. It was one of those things where we expected greatness on a different wrestler, perhaps. I thought the build-up was great. The vignettes were great.
Vignettes are
For
great.
the character. They
Yeah.
really, really built up him coming out. And then the outfit he was wearing, the sleeveless white, just didn't do it for me. It was very, very bizarre. And it's a shame because Undertaker, you associate with whatever, that's your graveyard guy. But Mordecai, they actually went to a biblical name. They went to a prophet. They went to somebody who is steeped in religions, not just of Christianity, but I mean, you can follow the etymology of the name back to Marduk and even to ancient Sumer. So
Mm.
there's so much you could have, not that WWE would ever go that deep. I just went deeper than the writer's room.
I don't
But
know. Like here's the thing: they try, and they probably could have done stuff like that, but WWE just they don't because Vince once it doesn't get over straight away, he's like no. And here's the thing, Dave. Not only did they give him such a big build with that, Judgment Day, the actual design of Judgment Day, that was for him.
yes.
Like I think he's the only wrestler in history that I can think of that in his debut he got his own set.
Oh, wow.
Because that's like there's no other reason. Like I know Judgment Day was around for a couple of years, but they
No, but
designed it
yeah.
specifically around him, and I can't think of anyone else that got that treatment, that ultimate fate in him, and it just flopped.
Hmm. It was a shame. Remember he came with the cross down to the
It was
ring,
so
and it
cool.
was
It was so cool. It was great. Like it was all there until it got in the ring, and then it just fell apart.
And you know what the funny thing is? We're talking now in 2020 about this,
Mm.
and even back then, and let's say it was 2007, I was pretty convinced that was the end of the Undertaker's time in the WWE. So
Yeah,
already back then, we
yeah,
were looking for who's going to be the next Undertaker, if you
yeah,
will.
yeah.
And
And we're still trying. We're still trying to find. You know,
yeah,
but he,
Aleister Black is just not doing it for some reason.
which sucks. You know, that's sad because I love Aleister Black. But it's just not
Oh
clicking.
yeah, no,
It's
there's
just not
so
clicking.
much. I sometimes I wonder if it's how do I say this? Sometimes I wonder if it is Vince's lack of understanding of religion in his own life that kind of prohibits these angles from making sense, because
Potentially.
things may be presented to him and he'll go, I don't really understand how that makes sense. There was a writer for the WWE, and his name is escaping me right now. He's done a ton of interviews after the fact talking about how when they were on the plane or in the limo, he would always be reading his Bible, and Vince would make fun of him for being the Bible reader, and how Vince just had no concept of
Yeah.
anything religious. It's just not who he is. It's not a knock on him. Whatever. I don't care what people believe. But sometimes I wonder if that's what held back the success of some of these gimmicks, was
That would
Vince
make
not
sense.
really understanding how they could have an impact on an audience that, well, let's be honest, is very much into
Yeah.
those particular aspects. Especially, your hardcore fans tend to be from like, the Bible Belt and whatnot.
Mm. That would make sense. Like I think, well, case in point, Vince McMahon booked a match against God.
Yeah.
You know, and like not in a joke way. He literally cut a promo in a church, and I remember watching that, and I was a little bit offended because I'm like, man, this is a bit much, and it's just like, okay, and then they booked the match, and he came down, and Shawn Michaels was his tag team partner, and you're just like, this is just a little bit too much. So it wouldn't shock me to hear that Vince just was like, it just doesn't matter, because it's so carny that he's so into his own gimmick that you can't get him back. I think, he believes it. He believes his own hype, for
Part of
better or
me
worse.
wanted to believe it at the time. I was like, all right, let's see what'll happen. I'm sure they're going to go up with something crazy where there's some sort of Undertaker-esque effect that God uses. No, it was a spotlight that just followed nothing down to the ring to accompany Shawn Michaels, who, by the way, very much was going through a phase, well, depending on what wrestlers you talk to, but I tend to believe it's true,
Yeah.
was very much going through a phase where he really had given up on his drugs and the alcohol and had found religion, and
Mm.
his beard was adorned with crosses, and this was a time. And so it was a very much a personal attack on him as well. I don't know how he could have felt comfortable with it. It was it's like those comedians who go on stage and say like, oh, if there is a God, strike me down with lightning. And obviously it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
But This was bizarre because this was broadcast to the whole world. This was a pay-per-view. This was a spotlight pretending that I don't know. I
Six
don't
six.
know how I felt. I felt uncomfortable. I don't know why. I was like, this doesn't feel right.
Yeah, that was it. Like I was 15, 16 at the time.
Right.
And I'm like, this feels just weird. It doesn't feel. I'm not entertained by it. I'm a little bit offended by it, but like not too much. But it's not that weird kind of like, oh, I'm never watching. It's more just like this just feels weird. It's just it doesn't feel right, and I didn't see any reason for it. It wasn't like in other angles that we've seen where it's like, well, okay, you're building towards something. You're not building towards anything. This is the match. This is what's
Right.
supposed to happen, right? There's no build. But one thing we did get out of that, which was great, was Joey Styles' epic work shoot promo
Uh
where he quit, and that was fantastic.
one of the best things in wrestling.
Yeah, it was great. So look, it wasn't all for nothing, right? Even if this was an unintended consequence of it. Um, yeah, that was
I
one of the
thought
best promos of all time.
I thought that was real. I know
Really?
it was a work shoot, and we found out later it was. And I found out later because I looked on W website, and all of a sudden he was listed as
Yeah, the web
he
the
was
lead
running
writer.
the website.
Yeah,
So, but that felt very real.
it
Joey
did.
Styles has always been fun, and I don't think the stuff he was saying was false either. I mean, I think he
No.
was saying very real things. It was very similar to Paul Heyman's work shoot. The one where Taz comes out and attacks him, I think. This was
Oh yeah, this is where he's saying you took Taz and you used the money to buy yourself an airplane.
it was something like that,
Yeah,
but he really
laid
really
into.
went into
He
Vince
really
for
went into
a lot
Vince.
of other things,
Yeah.
and that was Vince's way of saving it. But anyway, to get back to religion, um,
But see, but here's the thing though, right? That was the difference. Joey Styles is religious in real
right,
life.
right,
So it's like he actually gets it. And that I think you actually hit the nail on the head. When someone actually buys into it and gets it, they're able to bring it in. With Vince, he doesn't get it because he's a crazy person who believes himself to be beyond everything. And you're like, okay, you probably don't think anything other than the fact that you're who you are. And it just makes sense. You can't think beyond his own perception. Most people can't. But yeah, man, like one of the best promos of all time definitely was that Joey Styles thing. Let's take it back a bit.
okay.
The angle that stopped Kurt Angle from going to ECW when Raven crucified Tommy
Oh
Dreamer.
yes, yes. I wonder if we skipped over that one on purpose.
We did wanted to go back. We wanted
Yeah.
to go
Okay.
back,
Yeah.
and yeah, I didn't realize this until I watched the Rise and Fall of ECW. I didn't know Kurt Angle was in the audience, and at that time I was like 8, so I didn't know. I also shouldn't have been watching ECW when I was that young. Actually, wrestling in general, I shouldn't have been. We shouldn't
Shouldn't
have
have been
been
watching.
watching. We shouldn't
No,
watch it. No, I remember Gary said to me, he turned to his man. He was like, "Here, why did you let me watch wrestling when I was 8?" And she's like, "Sure, you didn't know what was on it." And it's like that's just hilarious. And it's kind of the same. I'm like, yeah, there was so much stuff that was going on there that went over, but ECW was even worse. And this was one of the angles that probably went over my head when I was younger. And then when I was watching the Rise of Fall in ECW, I'm like, oh wow, this actually happened, and this stopped Kurt Angle from going into ECW. So what do you think about that? Like, that was just a weird one altogether. Like, even Raven's whole thing, was very much on the nose.
I I'm a big fan. Well, I should phrase this interestingly because I was going to say I'm a big fan of cult leaders. That's not how I mean it.
I know,
I'm
I know what you mean. Yeah,
fascinated. I'm
by cult leader.
fascinated with the psychology of cult leaders and everything that
Yeah,
goes into that. And that's what they were trying to do with Raven's flock,
yeah,
and that was always his personality and stuff.
yeah.
So I kind of understood what they were going for, but at the same time, the way that they did that, and correct me if memory serves me falsely here, but it wasn't as if they told the live crowd, okay, this is a gimmick and this is an angle and we're ending here. They presented it very real. This was the end of the show. He was still being like carted out as the audience was leaving the arena.
Mm.
It was a very bizarre feeling to it, so that people were just, and that's what Heyman wanted. He wanted the shock value.
Yeah.
That's what
And
ECW always was.
I'm going to stop
But
myself. I'm going to stop myself there. It wasn't Tommy Dreamer. It was the Sandman.
Yeah, Sandman. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
sorry.
It's okay.
And they had done it where they had like taken his son to love Raven more than he did not. So yeah, they were blurring the lines. But this wasn't presented like a wrestling angle, Dave, as you said. It was presented like it was just he was trying to kill him.
Right.
You know.
It was just one of those very uncomfortable, kind of like, well, I think much worse than the Vince McMahon ego god thing. But
Oh
again,
yeah,
like you were
far worse,
saying,
far worse. Yeah.
but in the same vein of it wasn't really entertainment. It
No,
was just how can we shock you and do something that we feel will fit our needs for this. I don't know. It was, and if it kept Angle from going there, I mean, think of the ramifications of that. I don't know. Yeah.
like I wouldn't say cult leaders in general. That's something else. Like Bray Wyatt, CM Punk with the Straight Edge Society, which was dropped way too early. That was such a good
Oh,
angle.
so good.
It was perfect. It really was. It suited him so well.
Well,
Bray Wyatt,
that was that girl's. I was what was her name?
Serena Deeb.
Serena. Yeah, that was her fault.
Yeah. Sadly, but yeah, that was dropped. But we've seen cult of personality. Sorry, angles being used over and over again in wrestling because it's very effective. But I think that's the only access point that wrestling can actually do as far as a religion without it kind of ticking over into murkiness because a lot of it doesn't play. Like, obviously Christian countries are going to have these inbuilt things that we can touch on because it just is what it is, right? It's part of the structure. Interestingly enough, Alistair Black isn't allowed to go to certain countries because of his tattoos, because he's a Satanist.
Yeah, and
And
I.
that's another kind of weird
Yeah.
consequence of this, And it isn't even an angle. It's just he happens to have tattoos because he's a Satanist. You know the way?
It's anytime you're going to emulate this could get me into like a 5-hour discussion on things that I study way too much, but anytime you're going to get into any sort of angle that's going to invoke Crowley, and by the way, can I correct anybody who says Crowley? It's Crowley. Let's just get that right. That's
I
the
think
correct.
it's because of the Ozzy Osbourne song. That's why everyone says Crowley.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
drives me nuts.
yeah.
I've read books about, but yeah, there's very. All right, let me break this down really quickly for people who don't understand esotericism. There's a left-handed path and there's a right-handed path. Left-handed path is your Crowleys who took things like the Golden Dawn in the early 1900s and they turned them to evil, essentially. Do as thou will. It was about doing things for greed and for yourself. There's the
Yep.
right-hand path, which came out of the 1800s, when you had people like Helena Blavatsky, you would have later Rudolf Steiner, you would know from the Waldorf schools, etc., in modern times. And theirs was you do things for service to others. Now, these are all, of course, steeped in magic and rituals, and you could go back to the Kabbalah and all of that. The point
Mm.
is, there's two different schools of thought. It's much heavier, much more influenced in Europe because that's where a lot of this started. So it makes sense that's why those countries would be more affected by his tattoos. But
Mm.
that's the kind of really super brief overview of of how that system breaks down and the
Yeah.
character that they're playing on with him. And I was excited for them to do it with him, but I'd like to see a foil. I don't know if I don't know if anybody would even know about these historical figures I'm talking about, where to understand the foils that they could create for him. So I don't think it would really work in professional wrestling. But
It,
there
it
is stuff that they could do.
it could.
Um,
It could. Like, we've seen. See, TNA have done this. And look, guys, I'm just going to call it TNA. It's always going to be TNA, right? It just is. That's just the way it is. But TNA have done this with their Jim Mitchell character, Father James Mitchell.
oh
The Sinister
yes.
Minister. They've touched on this, but they've never went full bore. And Sting was involved with fighting this in there. But in order to kind of bring it over, you have to have a kind of, as you said, a foil. And there's nobody on the WWE roster right now who could do that because it's a different. That's a very entertainment based angle. And there's
Right.
nobody on, and this is something that we can probably get into in the course of the show as it's running. That there's nobody on the WWE roster right now who is a character.
No, we've gotten away from that.
We've gotten
It,
away from it, and it's too much of a throwback. That's why, like, Undertaker, well, except for the Fiend. I'm sorry, the Fiend is 100%, and Bray Wyatt. He's the only one who's actually a character, in that sense.
and it's almost if you have to be a character in real life, like AJ Styles, for
Yeah,
example.
yeah.
He could be your foil. I mean, he is
Oh
about
yeah,
as
oh yeah.
straight Christian, um, uh, like a hardcore fundamentalist evangelical as you want to get. He
Mm,
could be your foil for an Aleister Black, but
that's a good
I don't
point.
know how the audience would react to that because they wouldn't really understand that that's what they were going for. That's what
Yeah,
I'm trying to
you would
wrap
be
my head around.
you would be doing you would turn AJ uber mega heel, which is great if you want him to be uber heel, but he's supposed to be the good guy. That's going
Right.
to be a problem, and it's just because the way I think it's got to do with the way the WWE audience has been primed. They've been primed to always go against that, and
Right.
it's not an anti-Christian thing. It's just
No.
Vince doesn't get it, so he always just books it this way. And again, it goes back to even non-religious groups like the Right Censor. Their whole thing was they were a parody of the people who were coming after WWE in the Attitude Era for all the stuff they were doing, and
Right.
they were one of the best heel groups of all time as a result.
Well, I think you're exactly like you just hit on. It goes back to that change from the cartoony 90s to the Attitude Era when all of a sudden it became fun to root for the heels, so the heels became faces.
Yeah,
And even though we've gotten away from those types of characters, we don't have, Triple H and Shawn Michaels get on there and talking about how big their sausages are anymore. That's not, thank God, part of our nomenclature. But that's still what the fans cheer for.
yeah.
It's bizarre. You used to talk about Bizarre Land was Canada because they cheer for the heels. Well, now they cheer for the good guys who are supposed to be good. It's just, I don't even think the fans know what they're doing at this point.
It's as I said, we could touch on it there when we were talking about religion. Reason why Christianity will be brought up so much, or iconography will be brought up in loads of different things, not just wrestling. In the West, it's because that is just the DNA of the West is Christianity. So it's just we go to these things that we know. Humans work on like links, certain things that we know. So it's just like shortcuts. It's so we don't have to process it. It's just like, okay, I know what this means. In the WWE, its DNA is, this stuff is bad.
Yeah,
Cheer
and you
for
go
any,
against,
and
yeah,
you
you
go
go
against it
against what you're raised in.
exactly, and
Yeah,
that's the
yeah, yeah.
problem, and
That's what you
that's what,
cheer for.
yeah, and
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
and that's the problem. Like you're never going to be able to undo that because it's so ingrained. TNA got close, ironically enough. And remember, they're the group that had the SEX faction when they started.
Oh, right, right, right,
So they
right.
got close, with Sting, but it was being totally. I think AEW actually could work against that as well because it's not so ingrained. But
More about the wrestlers in
exactly,
AEW than it is. Well, and we've mentioned Sting a couple times, and it's important to note that there are several angles. I can't think of what's on my head. There are several angles that Sting refused to participate in
yeah.
because of his religious beliefs.
Which I don't blame him.
No.
I don't blame him. Like there were certain things done in WCW and TNA where
Yeah.
he's like, no. Now to be fair, I wish he had have maybe not done the last rights match
True.
because
Very true.
that's something else in and of itself. But yeah, there were some like very pushing the button stuff where he's like, no, I'm not doing it.
Or how about even the most bizarre? We mentioned him by name earlier, and I guess I'll never let a show go by where I don't mention him by name. But I mean, Vince Russo
Mm,
wrote the Attitude Era,
yeah,
goes to WCW, still is in that. Then he has this, I think it was 2003, I want to say it
three,
was a version. We've each read his book.
yeah,
And if you read Vince Russo's book, it's basically, in many ways, an apology for so many things and so many gimmicks that he had created that he felt, you know what, now well, it wasn't an apology because he refused to apologize for the past, but he said, these are things I would not do now because they go against what my beliefs are. I think even the name TNA was a kind of a sticking point for him where he tried to get changed. Because
yeah,
Walmart didn't want to sell the DVDs
yeah.
because of the connotations of what TNA stands for. Google it if you don't know. I don't want to go.
Test and Albert.
testing out it.
Testing
So,
over. Yeah, like it. I think again. Well, actually, if are you watching Dark Side of the Ring?
is that the Benoit series?
Yeah. Well, Benoit's in it, but there's loads of other ones. There was even one on the Montreal Screwjob and stuff like that.
It's the Vice series, right? I
It's the
haven't
Vice
caught
series.
any. Is it worth watching?
Oh,
You
it's
could give us
excellent.
something to talk about then. Yeah.
Yeah, actually yeah. We'll bring that up next week. Yeah, it's
Okay.
excellent. It's actually very good. The New Jack one is. Oh my God,
Uh,
that's crazy. That is crazy.
I've watched hours and hours of New Jack
It's
shoots.
crazy, dude. Seriously, I tell you, next week we're gonna talk about Dark Side of the Ring, guys, because
All right.
it's fantastic. Yeah, but you'll like the Montreal Screwjob one because it's literally Jim Cornette and Vince Russo talking about how much they hate each other for different reasons. So it's pretty entertaining. But yeah, he talks there. He's like, and even both of them say they're like both of them at different points go, yeah, I'd watch Jerry Springer and then just write Jerry Springer,
Yeah.
and that's what they were doing. And like, yeah, like in 2020, Jerry Springer would not get over now because a lot of stuff that happened there was either fake or horrifically offensive or both, just
Well,
for shock value.
and I've actually one of my local deathmatch promotions here, CZW Combat Zone Wrestling, which is kind of they're not what they used to be, but I've talked to wrestlers there that were on episodes of Jerry Springer.
Oh my
That's
God,
how
dude.
fake it was.
Oh
They
my
would
God,
literally
dude.
bring in independent wrestlers who weren't well known to have fake fights on the show. So
Fantastic.
if nobody was aware of that, if that's the only thing you get out of this
I didn't know that.
ridiculous conversation today, there's your little bombshell for the evening.
Dave, please get us one of those so we can interview them. It'd be amazing.
Okay.
It'd be amazing. I did not know that, but it makes all the
Yes.
sense in the world. It's like, who are these
Yep.
people? So yeah, and that's what it kind of goes full circle, right? Where Vince Russo was emulating Jerry Springer, and Jerry Springer was doing wrestling. So it's like, okay, there you go.
And
Um,
now in America, he's a judge. He's taken over the Judge Judy spot. He's now Judge Jerry.
oh, I didn't know that. That's so sad. But that's so sad, and that's so weird.
It's completely honest. Dead
Oh my
serious.
God. Well, that's crazy. I wasn't expecting to hear that today. I wasn't going to hear that today. But yeah, what a topic there. Fair play, man. That's didn't think we'd get 40 minutes out of that, but we
I
certainly
didn't
did.
either.
Um,
We didn't
yeah,
even get we didn't even get to talk about if anybody else is interested in looking up some things, because we wanted to try and cover more gimmicks and angles, and to a certain extent wrestlers that are religious and how it played into theirs. But if you start Googling around for Christian wrestling, you will find, maybe to your shock, maybe not at all, there are many, many different Christian wrestling federations,
I
alliances, leagues that
are
exist.
these all in America? Or do they have to be in America? Are they?
There's at least two in Texas that I've discovered. Go
Right,
figure.
right, yeah.
They have mission statements that you can watch. The videos are hysterical. I
Oh
encourage
well.
anybody to Google them. Just Google Christian wrestlers or Christian wrestling, and you'll come across them. It's fun.
I think we'll have to circle back to this at some point because this is too good. This is too good. Um, and look, it's wild. I think we've been covering this for about what, like 10 years each, nearly more. So it's just like, hey, why not? Let's just look at the weird and random stuff, And there's nothing else happening now, so
Oh,
why not talk about the more obscure stuff? That's pretty cool. But next week we will, for anyone listening, in next week, what we're talking about, we're going to pretty much, keep you up to date with what's going on with this virus, but also the Dark Side of the Ring. That series is great. It's on Vice, however, if you Google, you can find it.
yeah, I think
Um,
there's a lot on YouTube that they've released.
yeah, there's a lot on YouTube and lots on Vimeo and stuff like that as well. So just go
Yeah.
do some creative googling and you'll find it. And yeah, we will keep that in the chamber, I think, Dave, because that's pretty cool. That's a pretty good one. But before we wrap up this week, man, is there anything you want to plug?
You can follow me on Instagram at the Dave Stevens. Watch me juggle. Send me a like. That's
Send
super wrestling related. That's all I got.
send them your favorite Christian wrestler.
You can also email me, thedavestevens@gmail.com, or you can, of course, email us at nerdtoknowmedia. Let us know if there's certain topics that you want us to cover during this time. If you want us to talk about... No, I'm just kidding. If you want us to talk about anything, We will. Why not?
Yeah, no, like that is the best way to reach us. nerdtoknowmedia@gmail.com. You send us an email about what you want us to talk about, and we'll talk about it. As I said, we're going to start coming up with topics ourselves because we have the time, literally and figuratively, and it's like there's nothing going on. So if there's anything you want us to hear us talk about, we'll be willing to break it down and credit on it. You can email the show, you can tweet the show. Nerd to Know Media is on Twitter. That's literally anywhere you can find us. On Twitch as well, YouTube, all that kind of good stuff. If you do like what we're doing, leave a like, subscribe, follow if you're on Twitch, and yeah, we'll see you next week here on the Wrestling Rewind, Nerd to Know Media. Bye, guys.